Okay, geweldig. So let's start from the Mishnah. Tipas cholov shenafla al chatich. A drop of milk fell on a piece of meat that was inside a pot. So let's have a look at Rashi to get some background. Tipas cholov shenafla al chaticha b'soy chatera al achas min chatichos. So you have a pot with multiple pieces of meat in it as well as gravy, and the piece is not completely submerged in the liquid. Part of it is sticking up above the liquid, and it's that part of the meat that milk fell on. You didn't stir the pot, so that means the drop of milk will remain in the piece of meat that it fell into. And therefore, if you need 60 to be mevatel the milk, you only can take into account the volume of that piece of meat only, not of the rest of the items in the pot. Because Rashi learns that since that piece of meat is not completely submerged and the milk fell on the meat in a place where it was sticking out of the roitiv, it will remain only in that piece of meat. Tosfos actually learns that even in such a case, the roitiv that's around the bottom of this same piece will allow the tam to spread to the rest of the pot. Rather, he learns we have roitiv that's completely out of the gravy. For instance, you have one piece of meat that's in the gravy, because there is gravy at the bottom, and then you have a second piece of meat that's sitting on top of the piece of meat that's partially the gravy. Now, the second piece of meat on top is completely out of the gravy, and that's what we're talking. But let's stick with Rashi for now, that we're even speaking about a piece of meat that's partially submerged in the gravy. The tam spreads only through that piece of meat itself. It will not spread to the rest of the pot. Therefore, im yesh ba b'noisen tam, ba'oise chaticha, also, if there's enough milk that it will give a tam into that piece of meat by itself, it will be also. And the rest of the contents of the pot could not combine to be mevatel the tam. However, what if near a as soon as it fell in, you mixed up the whole pot, so now the tam of the milk is going to be spread evenly throughout the entire pot. Now you can use the contents of the entire pot to be mevatel that one tip of cholov. If yeshba b'nois and tam bois kedera, then it's going to be us. Let's have a quick look at Rashi. Im yeshba b'nois and tam bois chaticha. Kloimers at Rashi. She'ein bois chaticha levada kishem levat latipa. If that piece of meat, which is on its own now, cannot be mevatel the milk, then miyad naser chaticha. That piece of meat becomes also because of bosor b'cholov. V'shar chatichos diktera loit ayritan in the masnisa. Now the question would be: now you have one whole piece of meat that became osir. How will that impact the rest of the pot? The Mishnah is not directly addressing that. However, the Gemara pligiba im chayzeres oisach chaticha v'yisroson oilah. Will now that this piece of meat became osir, will it now turn around and transmit isser to the rest of the pot? That's going to be part of the discussion in the Gemara today. Near a sector, Zokrashi higisba, and the keyword is miyad. Immediately after the drop of milk fell onto that piece of meat, you instantly started to stir it. Koidim shekibla hachaticha haminatipa. Before that piece had a chance to fully absorb that tipa, you mixed it right away so that it didn't just spread throughout the chaticha, but it spread throughout the entire pot. The hashtan is arva hatipa b'kulam. So the Mishnah concludes, Kloimar ein koyach b'tipa lesser kulam elim kein yosh b'lois tam lited b'cholativ. Now, unless that tipa is more than a 60th of the rest of the contents of the pot, the tipa would become open. Because you could combine the volume of all the pieces of meat and the gravy in the pot to neutralize the taste of the milk. Amr Abaye, Zokta Abaye, Taimoi, Veloy Mamoshoy, Ba'alma is deraisa. There's a term that's called tam ke'ikr. Even though there's absolutely no more content of Israel. So, for instance, what if you have a pot and instead of chalav falling in, a piece of nevela, and it caused now that the taste of nevela was felt throughout the entire pot. And then you took the nevela out. So now there's no actual physical piece of nevela. The only thing that remains in that pot is its taste. Now that's also the question: is it also midoraisa or is it also midoraisa? So Amar Abaye, Haimoy v'loy mamoshoy ba'alma doraisa. B'chala tarakula is an iser doraisa, and where could you learn it from? Our very case of basar v'chalav. The Yisal Kedaitach to Rabbanon, if you want to suggest that there's no makar midoraisa for such a halacha mi basar v'chalav, my time of loy gamriya. Why in the world wouldn't you use basar v'chalav as a binyan to tell us b'chala tarakula that tam is ke'ikr? You don't see any milk left. It's only the taste of milk that you're tasting in meat, and that's precisely what the Torah forbade. So oibazah, you have a good source for the iser, for the concept of tam ke'ikr. Let's have a peek at Rashi. Am Rabbi, time of Elohim Moshe b'almaderachsa. Ha das rinon b'chol isurin mishad nasnu tam beheter aval pisha ein oichel mamish. That by all isura, even though there's merely the taste of the iser in the food, but not the actual iser. Kigarin silei ka iser. You took out the piece of nevela from the pot, vein kan elataimoi, and there's only a taste. That iser zok Rashi da'iraisa. It's midaraisa. The gamrinon mi basa b'cholav, because we could learn it from the halacha of basa b'cholav. The asrei rachmana b'achila. The Torah forbids us to eat basa b'cholav. Kidigamrina lekama. It says lois v'ashel b'di b'chalev imoy 3 times. Lois v'ashel shloisha pamim amur b'Torah. V'aval gav dechi misalik zeh mitoch zeh la'achar b'shulay. Even if you took the meat out of the milk or the milk out of the meat after it was cooked, ein kan elatam. The pot of milk now only has taste of meat, or vice versa. It remains awesome. So umine gaminon l'chol yisurin b'mematzinu, using a mematzinu, bosher b'cholav is a very valid source b'chol tarku. The salka daita b'chol shar yisurim taima is derbanani the legarminin b'bosher b'cholav my taima legarminin. Why wouldn't you learn it from bosher? Zok to Gemara, I'll tell you why you wouldn't learn it out of bosher. The chiddush, bosher b'cholav is a big chiddush. It has very unique properties. And there we'll say, Bosher b'cholav, which has unique properties, that's where you would say tam ke'ikr. But you wouldn't necessarily say tam ke'ikr b'cholav terakul. What is so special about Bosher b'cholav that we would call it a chiddush? So let's see what Rashi says, what the chiddush is. So if you look at the second wide line, my time aloy garminim b'nei the chiddushu, the shnei min heter, milk is mutter, and meat is mutter. Zelavadi zelavadi. Ucheshinis arbu nesru. And somehow, magically, when milk and meat join, they become also. That in and of itself is a chiddush. That's chiddush number 1, which doesn't apply to nevela, for instance. So therefore, maybe by bosher b'cholav is a tam ke'ikr, but you wouldn't know that by nevela. V'yoid, another way in which bosher b'cholav is unique, shederech bishul nesru b'lo achila. Normally, it's usher to eat it. Here, there's even an issue to cook it. That's not typical at all. So these 2 reasons are why bosher b'cholav is unique. Toitzis suggests another chiddush, because Tosfos doesn't like the chiddush that they're both tam heter. You know why? Because we actually do find another example of something where two things that are mutter, but when combined they're usher, and that would be kalayim. So Tosfos suggests another reason why it's a chiddush. So let's look at Tosfos the chiddushu. Pish b'kutrish the shnei min heter zel levadei v'zel levadei uchashidus arvu nesor. So Tosfos, this reason that Rashi says in Perak Elohim, the Gemara doesn't use this reason over Perak Gimel Minim. You know why they don't use this reason? The Kilayim Nami Hachi Havu Umasik. So the Gemara in Psachim and in Nazir actually have a different reason why it's a Chiddush. The Hainu Chidusha, the Taru Lekula Yoima Bechalba, if you soaked a piece of meat in cold milk 24 hours, Shari, it would be mutter, even though we know there's halacha when it comes to blias, that when you soak something for 24 hours, it's kimavushal. Kavush is kimavushal. Afalgav shen nivla hachol of. Even though if you soak meat and milk, you'll definitely absorb, the meat will definitely absorb milk. It's still going to be mutter. Afal pishu tzayni. Even though it's cold, it's still going to be absorbing. If you shoot soul, it's not viscous. It runs and it will absorb into the meat. It's completely mutter. But if you apply heat, then it's going to be awesome. That in and of itself is a chiddush, and that's why you might want to claim that you cannot use basar b'chalav as a source to the rest of the Torah that Tam is kicker. But Dr. Baya, you cannot say that. Because ichidishu, if basar b'chalav is so unique, then afal gav the lechanois tam dami. Our Mishnah says the milk has to give tam into the meat. Why? If the Torah says basar b'chalav is awesome and it's a chiddush, you shouldn't apply any of the standard rules to it, such as that it has to be nice and tam. If it's a chiddush, the fact that our Mishnah tells you need nice and tam means our Mishnah holds clearly it is following the structure of other isurim, and therefore it would be a valid makar b'chala terakula that tam is given. Only Rava, Zok Rava, no, that's not a reason why it's not a chiddush. That's all part of the chiddush. That derech bishul asur Torah. The Torah said lo savashel gedi b'chalevim, and derech bishul asur Torah could be interpreted two different ways. Either derech bishul asur Torah, if it starts with lo savashel, that means the Torah means the normal way people cook. Normally, when you cook something, you only add an ingredient if that ingredient is going to add taste to the concoction that you're making. So the Torah dictates as one of the chidushim of the Isra Basar B'chalav is that there has to be taste. But the reason why there's taste is not like you're saying Abaye, because it follows the norms of Isra. No, it's still unique, and therefore you still cannot bring a raya from Basar B'chalav to the rest of the Torah that Tam is kicker. So that's one savara of what derech bishul asur Torah is. The other pshat of derech bishul asur Torah is it means even if you're cooking meat in milk, if you're cooking meat in milk, if you put one drop of milk onto the piece of meat, you're not cooking the meat in milk. Cooking the meat in milk means there's a sizable amount of milk there that you can cook the meat in. But either way, the point is that the Torah is specifying that that's one of the rules of Basar B'chalav itself. And therefore, we're not seeing any sign of Basar B'chalav following the norms of any type of Islam. Zogt Tosfos, an important point. Amar Rava derech bishul asur Torah dichli b'alma, just a dich, because in fact Rava also agrees that tam kicker is midaraisa, like we know from other places. Rava is just saying, Abaya, your taina here is not a valid taina. But of course I agree with you that tam kicker is in fact daraisa. Okay, so now let's move on. Now that we know that this one piece of meat that absorbed taste of the milk is now usher, let's look at this status. Amarav, kivan shenosan tam bechaticha. Once this chaticha has absorbed the taste of milk, and it now has become basar v'chalav, chaticha atzma nasas nevel. You don't just say that the combined meat milk is going to be iser. Rather, now this whole chunk of meat became iser. The nafkamina is, what do I look at this? Do I look at this meat as 6 ounces of iser, or there's only 1 ounce of milk in here? Or do I only perceive this meat as 1 ounce of iser? The nafkamina is very much whether or not, how much volume do you have to use when you're calculating if this piece of meat will now aser the rest of the pot. So Rav said, I'm sorry? Rav said, Kivid shenos tam bechaticha, chaticha atma nasas nevela. It itself now becomes iser on its own merit. Voiseres kol chatichas kula. It will now aser all the rest of the chatichas. Now, even if there's 60 chatichas connected this piece, it will still aser. You know why, Rav? Mepnei shein mina. So Rav is clearly working with the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that min b'minoi loy batel, and therefore all the pieces of meat in the pot will become aser because they're min b'minoi, and there is one piece of meat here that's aser. Amalei marzutra b'erda mori l'ravin michti. Rav keman amar l'shemaitz. Rav is saying that min b'minoi loy batel, that has to be consistent with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Damar min b'minoi lebot. But if that's the case, we have the shita of Rava, where even if you hold min b'minoi leboto, in this particular case, where there's min b'minoi, there's one piece of meat that's basa b'chalav, many pieces of meat that aren't, but that's not the only contents in the pot. There's a whole bunch of gravy in the pot, and liquid, and vegetables that should also be able to be used to counteract the iser. So zokt Rava, even Rabbi Yehuda, who holds min b'minoi levotel, that's if there's an exclusive mix of min b'minoi. But what if there's a mixed mix? Means some is min b'minoi, but there's also min b'she'ena minoi in this pot. So Rava said that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that min b'minoi is not botel, but kol shel min b'minoi v'davar acher. If you have a scenario like our pot, where there is min b'minoi, but there's also other things in the pot, you know what you do? Salek es minoi k'mishe'enoi. We say the min b'minoi, the other pieces of meat, have no impact on this equation. Not to benefit it, to help me mevatel the piece of meat that's osher, and not to combine with it. You just delete it from the equation completely when you're looking about bittul, and then b'she'enoi minoi rabba olav mutat. You just look at this one piece of meat that's basar b'chalav against the gravy and the vegetables and the liquid and whatever else is in the pot, and if you have 60 in that connected a piece of meat, then it would be mavat. So you or Rab are saying that this piece of meat would ask for the rest of the pot. Not if there's other things in the pot. Zok to Gemara, you're right. If it fell into loose gravy where it's mostly liquid and vegetables, you're 100% right. The liquid and the vegetables will gang up against this one piece of meat and be mevatel. But that we're not talking about roitiv raka. Hachav mayaskin on the novel beroitiv ava. It fell into very thick gravy, meaning it's pieces of meat dissolved. If you look at the gravy, it's not liquid. It's a mush of meat. So the whole thing is min b'minoi. Therefore, the whole pot will become. Which takes us to the next step. If you think about it, if I have a piece of meat that's fully absorbed with milk and now it's osser, if I now cook it in a pot with 100 pieces of meat, won't the cooking itself suck the bli of milk out of that first piece of meat and now spread it evenly through the entire pot, which should then be mevatel, now the time of challah? Question is, do you say that when you recook something, we can extract, the cooking will extract that taste from the one piece of meat and spread it evenly through all the other pieces of meat in the pot? So Zok the Gemara Umay Kasover. Ikasover after L'Soichtoi Mutter. If you hold that you could cook it with another group of items and it will extract that taste and now spread it evenly throughout the pot, well then Chaticha Mai Nasis Nevein. Why would you say that that piece remains also? If now all the milk taste is going to be extracted from it to the point that it'll be so diluted that it's bottom Mashisha. Ellen Kasover, it must be that Rav holds he doesn't buy into that. And he said it doesn't matter. We don't say that all the time gets extracted. Rather, it remains awesome. The Itmar, notice the Lashon is not it's even if you could get it out, doesn't matter. That meat remains also forever. The Itmar, Rav, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yochanan, the Amri Efshel is also. And Shmuel, Rab Shimon, Rabbi, Reish Lakish, the Amri Efshel is more. So we're concluding that Vibalt Rav said that this one piece of meat will now answer all the other pieces of meat in the pot. It means Rav holds that Efshel is also. So the Gemara challenges this assumption. Sova Rav Efshel is also. Via Itmar, but we learned otherwise. Kazayis Bosher should not follow Toich Yorish Chalov. If a Kazayis Bosher fell into a big pot of milk, the piece of meat is also, obviously it's also, it's fully absorbed now with milk. The chalav mutter, but the milk will be mutter. Once you take the meat out, the milk becomes mutter. But why? If you hold that even though you could cook it and dilute it, it'll be also, let's think about it. Yes, the milk and the rest of the pot on its own, if you look at it, wouldn't have had enough taste of meat in it. But the milk that's within that piece of meat, that's usher. And it remains usher even if you can extract that milk because of efshel likely usher. So Frank the Gemara, why don't you say, let's turn over on to Amud Beis. Oops. Why did you say chalav amay mutter? Why would the rest of the milk in that pot be mutter? Chalav nevelu. It itself becomes nevelu. And Rashi articulates this beautifully. Chalav amay mutter, chalav ma'at, shenivla b'basar, the little bit of milk that was absorbed into that piece of meat. Not nevela. It becomes also minei obey. Charei nesar, because since it's absorbed into the meat, surely that milk content is also. If you continue to cook this meat there and some of that milk now returns out into the big pot of milk, now you have a problem of min. So why is the rest of the milk in the pot mutter after you moved to the vela? Because originally it didn't absorb basar. Could be, but it's for sure getting time of the milk that was in the basar, and it's min b'mino. It shouldn't be. So to the Gemara, that's not a So why is the milk mutter? The shiny awesome, a massive chiddush that the Gemara is not going to remain with. The Amar Kra, what is awesome? You're not allowed to cook the gedi. The Torah doesn't address the milk at all. The Torah is talking about the meat. Don't cook meat in milk. The milk will never become usher. Machmas the isur basar b'chol. Only the meat becomes usher. Machmas the isur basar b'chol. So if any milk gets extracted from this piece of meat that's usher, the moment that milk gets extracted, that milk is heter. Because there's never an isur on the milk. The isur is only on the meat that absorbed the milk. Zok the Gemara, that's a huge chiddush. I'll prove to you that that cannot be possible. Because for Itmar, the Gemara taught us, Chatzi zayis bosar, the Chatzi zayis cholov, shabishlon zebz. What do we do? Half a zayis bosar and half a zayis cholov that you cook together. Amarav loikal achilosa. If you eat it, you get malchus. You don't have a full zayis of basar, and you can't combine the chalav if you hold there's no issur to eat chalav. So Rav Amar loikal achilaso v'eina loikal bishula, but you don't get malchus for the bishul, which the Gemara will address soon. But v'yisalka daitach gidias v'toyer v'loy chalav achila my loik. Why would you get malchus for eating this combined mixture of milk and meat if you don't have a chazayis of meat content? Chatzi shiru, and you shouldn't get malchus. Elul oilam kasover, you must hold that oilam kasover Rav must hold chalav nami yosef. So we're back to the drawing board. If the chalav is aser, why doesn't it aser the rest of the milk in the pot? You know why it doesn't? The meat fell into a boiling, cooking pot of milk that's not cooling off. And if while something is actually still bubbling and boiling, the mivla bola miflit like whatever gets absorbed into the meat will stay in the meat and will not be released from that meat until the mixture cools down. The mivla bola. So we're guaranteed that none of the milk in that piece of meat will leave that piece of meat. Zok to Gemara, but eventually it's going to cool off, and that's when the milk in this meat is going to go now and mix with the rest of the milk. We're going to have to learn that speaking that a piece of meat fell into a boiling, cooking pot of milk, and you took it right out. So therefore, whatever milk this meat absorbed never left the meat to go back into the rest of the milk. Now, Tosfos asks a very obvious kasha. I don't want to get into it because I want to finish the Amud, but I just want to point out Tosfos' kasha to you. At the bottom, Tosfos, where it starts off in the thin lines and expands, Tosfos says, Tema, the dover hanir le'naimu. We know that's not true. The pollen, even in hot water, even in boiling hot water, not only would something be boiled, it will be pollen. How do I know so Tosfos? If you put a big green vegetable into a cooking pot of water, the water becomes green while the water is still cooking. It doesn't become green after it cools off. If you put meat into it, you're going to see the whole water is going to get discolored. So Tosfos has different ways of dealing with it. I want to first finish the Amud, and we'll see how Tosfos deals with it. But Rashi, we'll stick with Rashi's shot now. It's quite simple. When something's still cooking, boiling hot, it's not going to release any blias into the mix that it's in. Dr. Gemara Gufa. Chatzi zayis bosar, the chatzi zayis cholav, shabishlan zemzem. So you have a combined content of a kazayis if you calculate both the volume of the meat and the milk. Amarav loikal achilasoi, veina loikal b'tshuva. If the milk and the meat are mitzaref, so then you have a full kazayis, so abishul nami lilki. So why did you get malchus for cooking it? You cooked a complete kazayis of this. And you loy mistarfin, if you're going to say that you have a zayis of milk and the meat do not combine, so then achil nami lilki. Why would you get malchus for eating it? You're right, you're not mitzaref. Therefore, if you cook a half a kazayis of meat with half a kazayis of milk, you don't get malchus. It wasn't mitzaref. But you know when if you eat a half a kazayis of meat with a half a kazayis of milk, you'll get malchus. That's if there was a big pot of meat and milk that you cooked together, and it already became basar b'cholov because you cooked a large volume together. And then afterwards, you took a small piece of meat with a small piece of milk, and you ate it. So that's already a combined, homogenized issue already. That's why you get malchus for eating. But when we're talking about bishul, where you're only starting off with a half of each, there it won't be mitzaref and it'll be noise. Who did? If you took a half a kazayis of basar and half a kazayis of cholav, and you cooked them together, if you ate that, you wouldn't either get malchus because you never created that issur because you didn't have enough of each. The Levi Amar. Levi said, "Af loika al bishul." Levi holds you would get malchus even for the bishul. The Chetoni Levi b'masnisin kishem shaloika al achilosai kach loika al bishul. Ube'ein zeh bishul amru. What type of bishul are we referring to that would trigger a chiyuv malchus for cooking basar b'chalav? B'bishul shacherim oichel noitoi machmas bishuloi. What does that mean? What type of milk is this? So zokt Rashi, what does it mean? B'bishul shacherim oichel noitoi machmas bishuloi. Zokt Rashi, acherim. Zokt Rashi, oiv dekechavim. What does that mean? Cooking them for a second is not going to be over the lav. It has to be fully cooked to be mekayim or to be over the Isur Daraisa. Good. Now we do another law that bishul of basar b'chalav is only a complete cooking, not just a flash. Now, this halacha that we discussed earlier, the efshel l'soich, if you could now take a meat that's infected with tam nevela, and you're going to cook it in another pot with many other pieces of kosher meat, where now maybe the tam of nevela from this one piece of meat will spread and equalize throughout the whole pot, that sugya is a machloikis tanoi. So we had a discussion what Rav holds. So to this is up to Gemara, it's a machloikis. The Tanya we learned, tibas chalav shenafla ala chatif. If a drop of milk fell on a piece of meat, similar to our Mishnah, kivin shenas tam b'chaticha. Once this one chaticha has absorbed the tam of milk, the chaticha atma nasis nevela. We look at the entire mass of this piece of meat as iser. Therefore, voiseres kol hachatichas kulam b'pnei shenmina divi Rabbi Yehuda. Now, of course, this is only either if you don't hold of Rava, that's a like a sheina minod, or if it's very thick right, so it's all meat, like we said earlier. The Chachamim say no. Once you take this one piece of meat that has absorbed milk and you cook it in a much larger pot with a whole bunch of other contents, now you can use the entire contents of the pot to be mevatel the milk in that piece of meat. Why? Clearly, because they hold efshel l'shaychnis mutter. And yes, originally this meat was saturated with milk and it's basar b'chalav, but we've extracted it. We've extracted it. It now becomes mutter. Let's have a look at Rashi on the first white line. On this little drop of milk, you don't even look at the meat anymore. You look at the milk content of that piece of meat, and that will be severely overwhelmed by all the other contents in the pot. Unless it's enough, so even the piece of meat itself will not remain aser because we've now successfully extracted the concentration of milk that's in it. Okay. Omar Rebbe. Now Rebbe comes to be machriya between these two sheets. Nirin divrei chacham, nirin divrei Rabbi Yehuda. I hold we should pot like Rabbi Yehuda to be machmir, that the whole pot becomes aser. B'shaloi nir, b'shaloi kis. If you never stir the pot, that's where the original piece remains aser and everything becomes aser. But divrei chachamim, but I agree with the chachamim that the whole pot should be mutter b'shenir v'chisa when you did stir the pot. It sounds like a very innocent, benign statement, but upon deeper analysis, it could cause a lot of trouble. Frank the Gemara, my loy nir v'loy kisa. What do you mean when Rebbe said, I agree with Rabbi Yehuda if it was never mixed? Ilema loy nir klal. If you're going to tell me you never stirred it, ever, all that happened here was a drop of milk fell on a piece of meat, and that was the end of the story. So mivla, I understand why the piece of meat would absorb milk, because the milk fell right on it. But mivla lepala, how would you be able to make an argument that now the meat might lose that concentration and it's going to spread throughout the pot? You never cooked it, you never mixed it. So that can't be pshat. The Ella, what are you going to have to say? Loy near betchila ela b'soif. What you're going to have to say is, right away he didn't mix it, which means the milk had time to saturate that one piece of meat. And after it saturated that one piece of meat, and that piece of meat became ulcer, then you stir the pot, which will now allow, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this piece of meat answer all the other contents of the pot. The ela loy near betchila ela b'soif. The lakiza betchila ela b'soif. But if that's the case, Amach, why taka? Why taka? Would Rav agree with Rabbi Yehuda? Habola, yes, the piece of meat originally was beleya, the time of milk, but papola, once you mixed it all together, so now it should have been pilot. So why wouldn't you say that the little bit of milk gets neutralized in the entirety? Obviously, the answer is kasavar efshel also. It must be that Rav and Rabbi Yehuda both hold, they agree that efshel is also. And therefore, once this piece of meat was beleya on the milk, even though now you're going to try to dilute it in the rest of the pot, that meat remains osher minayup. That's what the Rabbi Yehuda would hold according to Rabbi. But don't forget, Rabbi said near Rabbi Yehuda in this case, which means Rabbi Yehuda says it even in another case. I'm not fully agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda. I'm only partially agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda, is what Rabbi said. I only agree with him if first one piece of meat was berleya and then you mixed it. But Rabbi Yehuda said his halacha in a different case, in an additional case where Rav is not endorsing. What would that case be? Let's turn on to Daf Kuf Tes. Before we cut for the day, let's turn on to Daf Cut. Michlal, Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Kinir Mitchila Vatsoif, the Kiza Mitchila Vatsoif would also be also. If Rav only agrees that it's usher with Rabbi Yehuda in a limited case, where first the milk had the opportunity to saturate that one piece of meat, and only then you spread it, that means Rabbi Yehuda must hold an additional case that it's also usher, which would obviously be the case where you always stir it. But what would be the reason for Rabbi Yehuda in that case? Amai, halabola klal. If you were mixing it from day one, that piece of meat should never have absorbed the high concentration of milk because the whole pot would have neutralized that piece, that little bit of milk. So that doesn't make sense. Emma, so what are you going to be forced to say? The reason why Rabbi Yehuda is machmir, even though you mixed it right away, when there's no logical reason to do so, because the top was neutralized, must be Rabbi Yehuda's geyser and his choishish ema loy near yofa yofa l'kisa yofa yofa. We're afraid that even if you're mixing it from the beginning, maybe you didn't mix it well, maybe it wasn't covered well, maybe you didn't affect that mixture, that equalization, well enough, and because of that, Rabbi Yehuda is hesitant to be matter, therefore he holds it's usher no matter what. So that would be Rav Shita as far as Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds no matter what, the whole pot's always usher. Rav says, I only agree that the whole pot is usher if first the milk had a chance to saturate and usher one piece of meat, then you mix it, then it would usher the rest of the items in the pot. Okay, let's stop here. Tomorrow we're gonna learn Rav's endorsement of the Rabbanon and where that case is so that we could sort out the Shittas. But for now, we'll stop here. Everyone should have a wonderful, wonderful day. I can bench today. And Bez Hashem, we will be Mapshach tomorrow.